Billionaire George Soros, a man who wants to impose a radical left agenda on America, and under the radar, he is making great progress. Soros has set up a complicated political operation designed to do two things: buy influence among some liberal politicians and smear people with whom he disagrees.
Well, that's right. George Soros is really the Dr. Evil of the whole world of left-wing foundations. In fact, one of his most chilling quotes a few years ago was that the main obstacle to a stable and just world is the United States. He really hates this country, and he funds these things, as your chart points out, and open borders and even radical Islamic groups that defend suicide bombers.
He started the Open Society Institute, which seeks fairness and justice. He also helped start the Tides Foundation, which among its many super classics are the anti-capitalist Story of Stuff indoctrination video. That's George Soros money. Great. Shown in schools all across America to warp your children's brains and to make sure they know how evil capitalism is. He's also a globalist. He's one of the power players trying to establish a new world. Watch when he says it. Notice how he stumbles every time he says this, because he's like, uh-oh, I'm really spooky dude saying new world order, probably freaking people out. Watch him. He'll stumble every time he talks about establishing.
You really need to bring China into the creation of a new world order, yeah. Financial world order. So I think you need...
Soros is heavily invested. I just want to show this. First, we start here. Crime Inc. George Soros, spooky dude. He starts Center for American Progress, headed by John Podesta. Center for American Progress with John Podesta selects the Obama transition team. Isn't this great so far? Next step, Soros. Soros is thinking about buying, almost $1 billion to Petrobras. In a completely unrelated story, BP has their oil spill. But wait a minute. Who's this guy? Is the guy who does all the lobbying for BP? Certainly. I'm sorry, Tony Podesta, certainly no relation to John Podesta, other than their brothers. We'll have to come back to that one later in the show. So then, Center for American Progress starts to make Obama policy. This one, we'll show you, laid out by Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal. One of the policies, cap and trade, which goes right to Crime Inc. and all of the Obama friends with the climate exchange in Chicago. That's weird. Then Obama suspends the deep water drilling at 1,500 meters. He says, hey, that's dangerous. 1,500 meters, that's crazy. Petrobras is drilling at 2,770 meters. Obama knows it and loans $2 billion to Petrobras. Last stop, Petrobras shareholders get rich. Oh my gosh, we're back at the beginning. Shareholder, Petrobras getting rich. You getting screwed. You see how this works?
And it was a tremendous threat of evil. I mean, it was a very personal experience of evil.
My understanding is that you went out with this protector of yours who swore that you were his adopted godson.
Yes.
Went out, in fact, and helped in the confiscation of property from the Jews.
That's right. Yes.
I mean, that sounds like an experience that would send lots of people to the psychiatric couch for many years. Was it difficult?
Not at all. Not at all. Maybe as a child you don't see the connection, but it created no problem at all.
No feeling of guilt.
No.
For example, that I'm Jewish, and here I am watching these people go. I could just as easily be there. I should be there. None of that.
Well, of course, I could be on the other side, or I could be the one from whom the thing is being taken away. But there was no sense that I shouldn't be there, because that was... well, actually, funny way, it's just like in markets. that if I weren't there, of course I wasn't doing it, but somebody else would be taking it away anyhow. In other words, whether I was there or not, I was only a spectator, the property was being taken away. So I had no role in taking away that property. So I had no sense of guilt.
Are you religious?
No.
Do you believe in God?
No.
Soros told us he believes God was created by man, not the other way around, which may be why he thinks he's told us he believes God was created by man, not the other way around, which may be why he thinks he can smooth out the world's imperfection. Like Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, and the Rockefellers, he amassed billions through ruthless business decisions. He can move world financial markets simply by voicing an opinion, or destabilize a government by buying and selling its currency.
It is sort of a disease when you consider yourself some kind of god, the creator of everything, but I feel comfortable about it now since I began to live it out. I admit that I have always harbored an exaggerated view of my self-importance. To put it bluntly, I fancied myself as some kind of god or an economic reformer like Keynes, each with his general theory, or even better, a scientist like Einstein. Reflexivity. George Soros is nothing more than a Nazi. He's a man that pushes propaganda, invests his money where he thinks he can make a difference and lead toward his globalization goal. Occupy Wall Street and the turmoil in Ukraine. He gives more than $1.8 million to radio stations like NPR. George Soros, he has ties to over 30 major news organizations. Just so you can see for yourself what kind of man he is.
Anytime that you're given the opportunity to protest and somebody will pay you to do it, that's like twice as good as just doing it on your own time.
So you weren't kidding around. You actually meant that you have been paid at some point to protest?
Yeah, like
How can I get in on that?
Yeah, okay, so you go to like georgesoros.com and you just sign up right there. You put your name in, you put your email address, and there's an empty box there where you say you're willing to protest and how much you want to get paid.
And you get a check directly from Soros?
Directly from Soros.
That's incredible.
Signed by him. He even invited me to lunch.
Does he sign it in blood?
He said if I'm willing to like gather some more friends, I can get paid like twice as much for every friend that I gather and kind of set up a pyramid scheme.
And you can get rich just based on protesting for Soros, right?
I already have, yeah. So basically, I've been organizing most of the protesting that you see in California so far, and it's all due to being paid. If I wasn't paid, I would be like skiing. Why?
This is unbelievable.
Yeah, I know. I just wish more people knew about it because then we could actually like start a movement.
It turns out those protesters disrupting Brett Kavanaugh's Senate hearing were getting compensated. And here's how. I'm Anders Hagstrom, and these are the facts. Left-wing organizations backed by billionaires like George Soros were bankrolling the cost of arrests for protesters who were screaming their lungs out during Kavanaugh's Senate hearing.
We ought to have this loudmouth removed.
And they plan to do it again. These organizations are the Women's March, the same left-wing billionaires who have had their hands in everything from protests against Brexit in the UK to legalizing abortion in Ireland. And now it looks like those funds are squaring up against Trump's push to get another Supreme Court justice. But what exactly are these organizations paying for? When you're arrested for a minor infraction like disrupting a Senate hearing, you can make what's called a post and forfeit payment of about $50 to get out of jail time. And that's exactly what these organizations were doing.
Left-wing billionaire George Soros may be tied to the sexual assault allegations against Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh.
One of the groups involved in the anti-Trump protests is called Move On. Its website calls for people to rally against the president-elect. It apparently has ties to billionaire investor and Clinton supporter George Soros, too.
That we believe Christine and demand that they #cancel Kavanaugh and vote no on his confirmation. The Women's March group counts Planned Parenthood and Natural Resources Defense Council as their premier partners. Both groups have actively opposed Kavanaugh since he was announced. Now, those groups take on significance because of their association with George Soros.
A long line of people accusing Soros of meddling. He's been accused of meddling in the politics of too many countries to even keep track of at this point, because he funds so many organizations who in turn organize so many efforts to sway politics that it's just mind-boggling. Just Google his Open Society foundations, and you'll start to get a feel for how many billions of dollars this one man pours into how many billions of places to spread his influence on the planet.
Mr. Farage, 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. As Mr. Moscovici said at the start of this, the leak of all these papers and lists of people with offshore holdings has come about because of the Society of Investigative Journalists. But what's not been said this morning, and I think is relevant, is that the funding of these investigations came from one George Soros. Now, I say this at a time, I'm going to come back to so what, and it may have some personal interest for you as well. I say this at a time when the use of money and the influence it may have had on the Brexit result or the Trump election has reached a level of virtual hysteria. Just last week, the Electoral Commission in the UK launched an investigation to find out whether the Leave campaign took offshore money or Russian money. This came about as a result of questions asked in the House of Commons by one Ben Bradshaw, somebody linked to an organisation called Open Society. I just wonder, asking some pretty fair questions, have you ever received funds, directly or indirectly, from Open Society? How many of their events have you attended? Could you please give us a list of the meetings of all the representatives, including George Soros yourself? And I think this Parliament should now set up a special committee to look into all of this. And I say that because I fear we could be looking at the biggest level of international political collusion.
The seemingly immortal trader, famous for being the man who broke the Bank of England, has said that with the exit of the UK, the disintegration of the EU is all but inevitable. As well, he has come out of retirement and is now actively trading, looking to reap ill-gotten gains from the chaos that he himself is helping to ferment. And this alone should make people nervous. But more on that in a minute.
Soros lost $1 billion because he bet against Donald Trump, his election, and the market.
George Soros, I would be at home in my mansion that he pays for. George Soros gave me this tattoo. George Soros paid for that tattoo. Paid for it. You know what?
I have committed $50 million over 10 years, and I hope others.
Of course. And this march was not really about women's rights or equality for women, because if it was, I think we would have seen the march move to the front of the Saudi Arabian embassy. You have to ask yourself, why would a billionaire like George Soros fund all these organizations behind it? The reason is he's had a lifelong dream of one world government, of elites, redistributing wealth and setting up rules for the rest of us.
George Soros is, of course, most well known for playing a major role in the funding and facilitating of the bulldozer revolution in Serbia that overthrew Milosevic in 2000, George's Rose Revolution of 2003, the 2006 push to move Turkey towards a more Islamist governing structure, and even the Occupy movement in the United States, among a great many others, none of which brought anything other than greater misery, impoverishment, and police state mechanisms to bear on the general public. The Occupy movement, maybe being the only exception, still brought nothing to its participants except the opportunity to burn off excess anger and energy, along with a few cracked protester skulls. It was otherwise an incredible waste of time. Soros has also been instrumental in funding and radicalizing the Black Lives Matter movement that has produced riots, racial attacks, and general racial tension across the country. We can include some of the other articles from this leaked Soros memo. Refugee crisis is the new normal and gives new opportunities for global influence.
Two public Hillary supporters who are known are George Soros, who declared losses of $1.5 billion. Soros declared 1.5 losses, $1.5 billion in just 6 months.
The monster George Soros, it's coming to light now that he actually worked to preserve fetal body part trafficking by funding Planned Parenthood. Yes.
The media is quick to air reports of women protesting the confirmation of Judge Brett Kavanaugh. They aren't telling the whole story. One America's Pearson Sharp explains how many of the women involved in the protest are actually being funded by liberal billionaire George Soros.
New York billionaire George Soros is financially backing 4 district attorney positions in California. He and other wealthy Democrat donors are throwing their support to the tune of millions of dollars behind these potential prosecutors who favor lower incarceration rates and police misconduct, among other liberal hot-ticket agenda items. What is your take on that?
He's been trying to reorder the world as if he is the creator. But that's perhaps because he thinks he is.
Soros himself admits that from the time he was very young, he had megalomaniacal ideas. He said he had messianic fantasies. He said he even thought of himself as a kind of god.
In The Alchemy of Finance, quote, I fancied myself as some kind of god.
Soros